time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Chad Erickson, and good to have you all with us on this Thursday edition of the show. Sam Yarnell will stop by in about 10 minutes. We'll get into some baseball with him. Some interesting things going on with college basketball as well. Kids are staying in school. Let's not pretend it's to get an education, though. We'll get into that. Some NFL news as well. But we started out NHL Eastern Conference Finals for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, and SiriusXM NHL Radio. And boy, I wouldn't be surprised, Dennis, at this point if we're talking about both these conference finals going 7 games.
It looks that way, Jay. I mean, one series, the East, looks like it's going according to script. I don't know what's going to happen in Game 5 in the West, Jason. Like, there's no consistency in effort between these two teams. You don't know from one game. So when you hear the cliche about these playoff rounds being 7 one-game series, you absolutely have it in Dallas and Edmonton. So it's a crazy night. You look at the game last night, 2-0 Dallas. You're figuring, okay, stomach reservation, playing hotel reservations for Dallas. And Edmonton gets off the deck and really the momentum now swings with them. But when you look at the 4 games, Jason, you're like, what momentum? Like, you really don't know what's going to happen. And to your point, with respect to viewing and the drama around this series, it's great for the fans.
Yeah, I mean, they get a couple of goals from Janmark and Draisaitl in a 51-second span in the second period. They even that series at 2 games apiece. You know, we were talking yesterday on the show, Sam and I, my partner, we were talking about, Ottinger and net, and then they give up 5 goals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. There's no consistency to either team over 4 games. You don't really know.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, first of all, Jay, there's not much difference between the 4 teams. Like, there's not. You want to talk about parity, and that's one of the reasons that you at the top that you said this is so great. It's so competitive. There's no overmatching. I don't know. It's sometimes it's momentum, sometimes it's lack of focus, and sometimes you have to credit the other team for having skill. That's the other thing, Jay. Sometimes, when going into that game, Leon Draisaitl hadn't scored in 2 games. It had been 3 playoff games since 2017 where he hadn't gone scoreless in 3 games. So you knew last night he was going to score. He got a great feed, wound up finishing at that 4-2 goal. But I just think there's not much to separate these teams. And if you're not totally on your game, you're going to wind up losing. And last night, a big injury was Chris Tanev going out in the second period, getting hit by that shot. It looks like he might come back for Game 5. But when you have an injury like that to a 20-minute-a-night defenseman, it sometimes tipped the scales. And that was part of the issue last night for Dallas and Edmonton.
We talk about all these different goaltenders in this postseason. Stuart Skinner's not one we really talk about a lot.
No, because he's the 4th best goaltender, Jason. It's as simple as that.
Yes, but still, 4th best goaltender of the last 4 teams remaining. He played pretty well. He played pretty well.
Okay, but if you look at those 4 goalies, Jay, and you had a Game 7 to win.
Yes.
Would you pick Stuart Skinner? Yeah, look, but he's made some big saves in this series. The problem is, like, the 4th goal, and I know they want to blame Nurse for everything in Edmonton at this point because he's making $9 million as a defenseman. He's not effective. But you got to stop that 4th shot. And that's the thing. Stuart, he kept them in the game, like, up until that play. And that's, again, it's inconsistency. His save percentage is below 900, which if you're a novice fan, that's not particularly good. It's because he gets great run support from his team that he wins games. He's made big stops. But do you look at him and say, okay, this guy can win 16 games? I guess, Jay, he's got 10 wins already. So could you do it? But again, if I had to rely on one of these goals to win me a Game 7, Stuart Skinner would not be at the top of the list.
When we talk about, a lot of times in the NBA, we'll talk about how good it would be for the league if Team A or Team B can make it to a championship. Oh, the Knicks and Lakers. What would it mean for Edmonton to reach a Stanley Cup final right now?
Well, it depends on the competition, Jay. Connor McDavid playing games at Sunrise isn't going to resonate in the States. Connor McDavid playing Stanley Cup final games at Madison Square Garden on Broadway. So if Edmonton's going to make it, and
if it's well, let me ask you this then: if the Rangers are the team in the Stanley Cup final, would the NHL rather see Edmonton or Dallas? Because Dallas is a big market too.
There you go. I don't know. Historically in the States, viewership for Canadian teams late in the playoffs isn't great. Like, I don't think Vancouver and Edmonton was a great ratings bonanza for here in the States. They were late games. Again, not to be chauvinistic, but in the U.S., who cares about Vancouver and Edmonton unless you're really a true hockey fan? So I think that given the size of the Dallas market, they wouldn't mind. I think they would prefer the Rangers in. Let's put it that way. Although I love the Panthers, I love what they've done down there. The fans have come back to that building at Sunrise. But I think that if they want the bonanza from a rating standpoint, Jay, you want the Rangers in there without question.
Yeah, I would agree. And obviously what Connor McDavid brings to the table and the ability to shine a spotlight on him.
Oh, yeah.
With that New York audience is obviously something the NHL would be thrilled about. All right, so best of three. I know you said you can't predict what's going to happen, but I'm going to ask you to do that.
Okay. In both series or one series?
No, just this. We'll get to the Rangers
Dallas,
and
Edmonton.
Panthers next.
Okay. I had Dallas in 5, so my prediction's already wrong, but I've had a brutal season in the postseason predicting.
I think
everybody
still think
Dallas finds a way. Yeah, I think Dallas still finds a way, but here's the thing, Jay. Road teams have won more than home teams this season. So if you think Dallas is going to win a game 7 in Dallas, think again. If you watch them play, I think they're 4-5 at home. But I'll stick with Dallas. The Tanev injury notwithstanding, I'm going to assume he's going to play. I still think they find a way to get to the Cup final from Dallas, and I don't think anybody at the NHL offices in New York would be upset about that.
No, I don't think they would either. We're hanging out with Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio, getting some thoughts with him on this postseason with Dallas and Edmonton meeting up. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot more to do as we continue on this Thursday edition of Sports Wrap. Dennis will hang out with us. We'll talk with him about this Rangers-Panthers series, plus a hire that we want to get to from a coaching standpoint, a little bit personal for me as somebody here in Palm Springs, California, because we've got an amazing AHL team out here, the Coachella Valley Firebirds, which are one of the final 4 teams remaining in the AHL postseason, and their head coach, Dan Bilesma, will be their head coach no longer. When his run ends with this AHL season, he will be the head coach of the Seattle Kraken. We'll ask Dennis for his thoughts on that as well as we continue with this Thursday edition of the show. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot more to do.
Over 13 million Americans were affected by identity theft in 2022, and the threats go way beyond just credit card fraud. Today's identity thieves can use your information in ways that are easy to miss by just monitoring accounts and credit, like opening loans, transferring home titles, even committing crimes.
Someone got my social security number, made a driver's license, and it was used for criminal activity.
You can do so much with a social security number that I didn't know could happen. They drained my bank account. It was terrifying.
You're even more vulnerable than you realize. Your information is exposed through online shopping, banking, even corporate data breaches. No wonder there's a new victim of identity theft every 3 seconds. Only LifeLock alerts you to the widest volume of threats all in one place, like someone trying to use your social security number, open a new loan in your name, or even commit a crime in your name.
There was a big yes button and there was a big no button. I clicked, "That's not me," and LifeLock took it from there.
If you become a victim of identity theft, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will be assigned to your case and work to fix the issue on your behalf.
If something happens, you have somebody fighting for you.
All LifeLock members are backed by the LifeLock $1 Million Protection Package, including reimbursement for stolen funds, personal expenses, and coverage for lawyers and experts up to $1 million. It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity. With LifeLock, it's easy to help protect yourself.
I will be with LifeLock forever.
Join the millions of people already protected by LifeLock. And for a limited time, save 25% on your first year with promo code 25TV. All plans include a 60-day money-back guarantee.
Call 800-710-7531.
Or visit lifelock.com/25TV to save 25% on your first year of identity theft protection. Enroll now.
Attention families with a loved one in a nursing home. If your loved one has suffered from bed sores, falls, broken bones, dehydration, or even death, you may be entitled to a substantial settlement. If you have a loved one who is injured in a nursing home, we will find out what happened. State violations are found against nursing homes every day. You have a limited time to file your claim, so don't wait. Call 800-398-5999 and speak with one of our attorneys. The call is confidential and free.
Sports Wrap continues on this Thursday. Thanks again to Dennis Bernstein for hanging out on the show and talking some NHL. Rangers-Panthers should be fun tonight. Can we get a fourth overtime game? Do I have four, anybody? Let's bring in Sam Yarnell. Four. Do I have four? Sam, do you know I did something last night before we get into this baseball talk real quick? We might have highlights of it later in the show. I did something last night I've never done before. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
I went to a Dave & Buster's.
I saw the video on your Twitter.
I went to a Dave & Buster's, and did I have fun? I had a good time. I'm going to have to do that again. That was fun. Good stuff, man. If you've never been to a Dave & Buster's, folks, if you're like me and live in a cave, go visit a Dave & Buster's. They are not sponsoring anything I'm doing. I had a blast.
No free ads, but
Wednesdays
Jason
is half price,
right.
too. Half price games.
It's exactly what I was going to say.
Yes.
Jason did it right. You go on Wednesday because Wednesday. So when I was in college, quick story, there was a Dave & Buster's about 3/4 of a mile from our house. We figured out that the Wednesday half price thing was going on about halfway through the year. And for the entire second semester, I think every Wednesday we would end up at Dave & Buster's. Great time.
Yep. If you ever get a chance, go and do it. It was a lot of fun. I didn't even eat and drink. I was just playing video games and trying to get coins and get tickets so I can get like a massager for my back. It was great. I had a good time. All right, let's talk some baseball. We're going to get into it with Bruce Beck, so I'm not going to get too knee deep in it. The Mets are a mess right now. I mean, you want to talk about an organization that is in complete chaos. And this is the perfect example of be careful what you wish for. For years, all I heard was Mets fans complaining about how bad things were with the Wilpons, and they gotta sell this team, and oh my God, Steve Cohen's here and everything's great, and Buck Showalter comes in and the Mets are good again, and then everything went to crap. And the Wilpons got to be sitting back somewhere right now just going, you think it's easy owning a Major League Baseball team, huh? You think this is fun? You think this is easy? For those who didn't see it last night, Jorge Lopez gets tossed and then tosses his glove into the stands after the game. Listen to what he said.
Carlos Mendoza said that he understands the emotion, but that particular action of throwing your glove into the stands was unacceptable. Looking back on it, do you regret doing that?
No, I don't regret it. I think I've been looking the worst team probably in the whole MLB. So, whatever happened. So,
just to clarify what you said, just because I didn't fully understand. Did you say I'm on the worst team? Is that what you had said?
Yeah, probably. It looked like.
And that they were embarrassed by you? Is that what you?
Yeah, they do.
Why do you think that, Jorge?
Huh?
Why do you think that?
What I think that?
Yeah, why?
What you think walk into the dugout and throw the glove over on the middle of the game?
I got to be honest. A lot of people thought he was saying that he's on the worst team in baseball. I think what he was trying to say was, I'm the worst teammate in baseball. I don't think he was pointing the finger at the team. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I actually came away with. And you said there's more to this story than a lot of people know.
Yeah. So from all the reporting that I followed, and I think Steve Gelbs did a great job of it. He does a great job covering the Mets for SNY. He said that he went back later and asked Jorge Lopez to clarify after all of the internet speculation started. And Lopez said he felt like he was the worst teammate on the worst team. So he kind of doubled down on both of them. Not a great look. Boomer today on WFAN in New York said that there may be some issues with his son and some health issues, and they were waiting on something. And last night it just kind of came to a boiling point, especially with, the reaction with the umpire. And everyone knows Laz Diaz has a notoriously short fuse. It's a tough situation. Very Mets. Like, as much as it sucks to say, this is so quintessentially Mets baseball,
and it is
for all of this to happen.
And it's as bad as it can get because the Mets are really bad and the Yankees right now are really good, which dovetails into one of my points I want to get into. Luis Gil for Cy Young. I said last week, plus 3,000, I think, was the number that you could get him at. I'm looking right now. Hold on. Let's see what is the number.
Hasn't changed.
It's still the same. They still have this guy at. Oh my God! Run, don't walk. Go and get your Luis Gil money in right now. If that dude is still at plus 3,000.
So it's a missed number for sure. I would definitely recommend betting it. As someone who already has two AL Cy Young tickets on guys who are still in the top 5 in terms of odds, I probably won't. But when you compare when you go Luis Gil by the numbers, the only problem with him is the walks. Like, if he can get the walks down over the course of the season, literally all of his other numbers are comparable to Tariq Skubal, the favorite to win this award. The only difference is Luis Gil walks about 12.4% of the batters he faces. Tariq Skubal walks 4.3% of the batters he faces. So that's why Tariq Skubal's plus 200 to win this award and Luis Gil's 30 to 1. But I'd still put a little sprinkle on it because
I got news for you, though, Sam. Sam, I got news for you. Last 20 and a third, only 5 walks. Frankly, the last 4 starts, Sam, for Luis Gil. The last 4 starts, 2 walks, 2 walks, 1 walk, 2 walks.
The most promising thing for me on the Gil front is that his fielding independent pitching is very low. And I love to talk on this show about how that's how we kind of see if things are going to be sustainable for pitchers, is if their FIP is a lot different than their ERA, if there's a huge disparity there. With Gil, there's not. So that's very promising in terms of going forward and his ability to have sustainability with this pitching.
We only have 30 seconds. Quick point on Imanaga.
Oh, the Tuesday, Wednesday blow up for Imanaga has vastly changed the NL Rookie of the Year and the NL Cy Young markets. I would say put your Imanaga tickets in now. It was clearly just a blip on the radar. That guy is still going to be very good.
And Paul Skeens just continues to deal for the Pirates as well. Lots more to do as we continue on the show. Don't go anywhere. Good to be with you on this Thursday edition of Sports Wrap. All right, Sports Wrap continues. Good to have you with us on this Thursday. Sam Yarnell hanging out with us. Look, I always thought this was the road that we would start to see players go down when NIL was instituted. The idea that you've got so much money you can make at the collegiate level before you have all these pressures of life in the NBA. If you're even going to go to the NBA or be a player in the NBA, you have this opportunity now at the collegiate level to make your money, have a good time, go through the college experience, hey, and maybe even get a degree. That's the last thing on the list. And you're seeing a lot of guys say, hey, you know what? Draft schmaft. I'm going to stay in school and continue to play college basketball. I'm not shocked by this.
No, yeah. I always draw this back to the Balls for some reason. The Ball family in college basketball. Sure. Back when Lonzo was the biggest thing in college basketball and his father was out here like making this brand for his college son before he was even drafted to the Lakers. And I don't know. How long do you think it'll be before we see a college athlete have their own signature shoe? Like Zion would have had a signature shoe if he were, signed to Nike while he was at Duke, right? When do you think we'll see the first college athlete signature shoe?
It's a good question. It's a very good question. I don't know. I mean, you got kids who are staying in school practically like 6 years now. I mean, you see it in college football all the time.
Imagine if we had a modern day Perry Ellis. Like that guy would have he would have a whole endorsement deal. He would own a car dealership by the time he graduated. That's how much NIL money Perry Ellis would make in the day and age of today.
Can we find any futures bets on UConn to win the national championship next year? Because I'm curious to know what the Huskies are at. I couldn't find anything offhand. They bring back Caravan next year. And, you get the kid from Alabama saying, hey, I'm coming back too because, I want to try and finish the deal for Alabama to try and win a national championship. I just think it's great. I think it's a great thing for college basketball. I'm sure a lot of these schools and a lot of these coaches are thrilled because part of the problem of the John Calipari regime at Kentucky was he had a bunch of one-and-doners. It's impossible to build team chemistry. It's a complete... It's a byproduct of this whole NIL thing of kids being able to stay in school, still make money, not have the pressures of the NBA. These coaches get to keep these guys under their thumb a little bit longer and sort of mold and build these teams and build some sort of cohesion. Like I said, I think it's great for college basketball.
I think it's great for college basketball as well. By the way, on your point about UConn, they're the second favorites to win the 2025 national championship.
Who's ahead of them?
They're 11-1. Kansas, the favorite, 10-1. And then Alabama, Duke, 11 and 12-1, respectively. And then it falls off to Baylor at 18-1. I think that the important thing that we need to remember in all of this, and I think baseball is a very interesting model to kind of use as comparison, right? Because baseball until now was the only sport where you could be drafted out of high school and be offered hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you could choose to go to college for 3 years and then have a chance to be drafted again after, those 3 years of college. Now, there are interesting cases like Pat Connaughton, the Milwaukee Bucks guard,
Pat Connaughton,
small forward. He played college basketball, was drafted to play in Major League Baseball, signed with that Major League Baseball team, received the signing bonus. I believe it was the Baltimore Orioles. Got his signing bonus, went to play for a summer while he was off from school, but then went back to school to play basketball again with all that money already in his pocket. There were people like that who did. So that was kind of the cheat code before, was just to play baseball. And now you have this bypass to that. I think that I say all that to say we cannot forget, and me being the college baseball fanatic I am, we can't forget about the college baseballs, the college softballs, the volleyballs in all of this. When we're talking so much about football and basketball, there has to be some sort of trickle down economics. Now, I talked on the show when the news originally broke that schools can now directly pay players. I really hope that causes a trickle down to your rifling squad, to your, your women's volleyball team, to your racket team and things like that. But if it doesn't, that's a huge opportunity lost for the NCAA in my mind.
Bronny James, agent Rich Paul, has basically said, look, no two-way deal. Now, I will say this. He has said that with all of his players, that is his philosophy, that he doesn't do two-way deals. And I got to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with it. If you can get a team to commit to having a guy on a roster for a full season. And I heard him talk about this on the Altcast, which I was watching, I don't know, last week. I was watching the Altcast where he was explaining the difference between a two-way deal and just being on a team for an entire season is commitment. It's the ability to nurture and sort of build and mold a player as opposed to not being 100% committed to a guy. I don't have a problem with it. I know a lot of people are going to say it's a diva thing. It's a Bronny James thing. He made it clear he does it with all of his players. So I don't have an issue with it.
I don't think it's a Bronny James thing. I think it's a Rich Paul Clutch Sports diva thing, and they know they run the league, right? Because at this point, it's the truth. Clutch Sports is the Illuminati of the NBA. It's the truth. The problem with this is the G League is a developmental league. I've seen G League basketball firsthand. I know what goes into that kind of preparation and trying to make those players better. It is more important for a player like Bronny James to play more minutes while developing his talent than ride pine on an NBA team where he's not even going to get any sort of good minutes in scrimmages. This is not the right decision. This is Rich Paul Clutch Sports, like I said, showing their divaness in the NBA. I'm very upset at all this. I really hope no team wastes a first-round draft pick on Bronny. He can't go before pick like 50.
The more guys that pull out of the draft, the higher up the draft he's going to wind up going. He's going to get drafted. Just a question of where. Continue the NHL conversation. Let's get back to it with Dennis Bernstein of thefourthperiod.com. SiriusXM NHL Radio as well. Does a great job there. Talking about these conference finals, Dennis. And boy, this Rangers-Panthers series. I said we do the betting stuff with Sam and I. Before the series started, I said there was a bet that I loved. It was 3 overtime games or more. The number was plus 750, which if you know anything about sports betting means it was not, it was something you could make a lot of money on if you wagered on it. How about 3 overtime games in the first 4? I mean, who could have called that?
Yeah,
well, apparently me.
You can call it because there's not much to separate these teams. And I mentioned, talking about Dallas and Edmonton, you could throw out the script. It's right on script, right? There was an NBA analogy to this series. You've got the Rangers who really are like a 3-point shooting team. Right? Doesn't get a lot of opportunities, but when they do, they finish. And you have the Florida Panthers who has a really strong inside game. Right? They go to the hole. Right? So if you're a casual NHL fan, you want to compare it to that. That's the type of series this has been. I picked the Rangers in 7. I think it's going 7. There's not much separating these teams. The thing is that if the Rangers could get anything from the top guys, like they would probably won the series already, Jay. And that's the one thing is that they're getting enough production. Like who thought Barclay Goodrow? And I know that Laviolette has said a lot of great things about he's being a playoff performer. The guy had like 4 goals the whole season, the whole regular season. But he stepped up. He's gotten production he's added the production, but they've gotten nothing from Panarin. They've got nothing. Chris Kreider had 1 shot in Game 4. Right, they're getting nothing from Zibanejad. They're getting buried with respect to puck possession. Right, they're getting nothing from Adam Fox. So I gotta think, Jay, he's nursing something. He's not at 100%. But with all that, they still have home ice. They found a way to win Game 3. And again, pick your choice. I picked the Rangers at 7 because the Panthers emerged. Absolutely, because again, there's not much separating these teams. You have 2 goaltenders who are on their game. This is a very, very enjoyable series. So I think if you had to bet which series would go 7, it would certainly be the Eastern Conference Final because when you watch these games, like one bounce of the puck could decide a game, and it could on Thursday as well.
And look, Shesterkin and Bobrovsky have both been good, but if you put the proverbial gun to your head sort of question. I'm going Shesterkin. If it's between these two. And what's amazed me most, I remember watching the first game of this series and going, uh-oh. I mean, the Panthers really shut down the Rangers. I mean, there were very few opportunities in that game. And it's not to say the Rangers have gotten a ton of opportunities. If you go look at shots on goal, they're outshot every game. But it feels like the opportunities they do get, they cash in on them.
Yeah, because they have skilled players. And we've got Lafreniere's another player who's really stood up for them in this round, right? They haven't had a ton of scoring. But again, that's what they do. They get out chanced, they lose the puck possession battle, and they still win games because they have a saver in the back in Shesterkin, who, even though they lost 3-2, he probably made 6 or 7 saves, Jason, that kept them in the game. And that's what this guy does. He's the great equalizer. But that's what you're going to see. You're going to see that the Florida Panthers are going to have puck position. They're going to go to the net. They're going to get opportunities. The Rangers can finish. But the concern is that their big guys aren't finishing yet. Yet it's 2-2. It's a best of 3. You have 2 games at the Madison Square Garden. But again, as we mentioned, like road teams are doing better than home teams. But it's tough to say because you can't give Rangers opportunities because they'll make a great play. They'll be down 2-1, and Fox will make a great play, or Panarin will make a great pass, or Trocheck, who's been fantastic for them, will find a way to score a goal. They finish their chances. They're an opportunistic scoring team. They don't shoot in volume. Like, they're not going to crush you. And but the one difference, Jay, I'll say about this, like going back to the last round when they beat the Carolina Hurricanes, like the Panthers are not the Hurricanes. They're a much more physical team, and the concern if you're a Ranger fan is how much of the physicality will get to this team as this series lengthens, as we get to Game 6 and maybe a Game 7. They pound on you, they find opportunities, and not for nothing. Like, how much stress can Shesterkin take? Like, how many times can he make 35 saves in a game? I guess he also has to do it 2 more times to get to the next round, but that's the concern because this is a big, physical, nasty Florida Panthers team that's not going to let up. The intensity is going to be there. So again, sometimes it's like a boxing match, Jay. Styles make fights. These styles make a great fight in this round.
Yeah, it certainly does. Talk to me about Dan Bilesma because, I mean, this is a guy that went, 7 years? Basically in the coaching wilderness, had to go back to the AHL. We've seen the job he's done out here in the Coachella Valley with the Firebirds, coaching that team to a Calder Cup final last year. They're down to the Final Four this year in the AHL. And obviously a lot of that has to do with the pipeline of talent that the Seattle Kraken have, and we've seen that here over the last couple of years. Give me your thoughts, though, on Bilesma getting another opportunity in the NHL.
People forget he won a Stanley Cup, Jason, because it's been that long. It's been more than a minute, but he stuck at it. He went down to the minors. He shrugged off and said, "Look, I want to keep playing. I love coaching." He's certainly a player's coach. He's a very upbeat guy. And I think the bigger story, Jason, is not even Dan Bilesma, because when Dan had the conversations with Ronnie Francis and ownership in the front office about coming in, he wanted the assistant coach, Jessica Campbell, who's obviously, by name, a female, to maybe join him in Seattle, and she would be the first female assistant coach in the NHL, which would be amazing. But good for Dan. He's got some talent. Ronnie Francis does have to get him a couple more scores, Jason, because the reason that Dave Haskell isn't here anymore in Seattle is the lack of scoring. Like, they had a great first season. They beat the Colorado Avalanche in the second round of the playoffs, and they regressed because the scoring wasn't there, and that's what you thought. So it's incumbent upon Ronnie Francis to get more horses for Dan Bilesma. But good for Dan. He kept toiling in the minor leagues, hoping to get another shot. He did the job in Coachella Valley, as you mentioned, did a great job. And I'm sure when they interviewed him, I'm sure they talked to some of the Coachella players. I'm sure they love Dan Bilesma because he's an upbeat guy. He's a player's coach. So good for him. Good for sticking at it, and he'll get his opportunity. I'm really interested to see if Jessica Campbell will accompany him to Seattle as well. That will be a great thing for women and women's hockey.
Yeah, because there's also a thought that she could wind up becoming the head coach here at Coachella Valley as well, and groom her to be an NHL head coach as well. Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio. Thank you, sir.
It was a pleasure, Jay. Thanks for the time.
All right, let's take things to the NFL on this Thursday edition of the show. Thanks to Bruce Beck for hanging out with us, by the way. Talking about the mess that is the Mets. Little Rangers-Panthers talk as well. It's out at practice. Checking them out. Sam Yarnell, something to consider when it comes to the NFL. Boy, the effort to win 3 championships in a row. I mean, it feels like this Kansas City Chiefs team is putting every whatever you want to call it, roadblock in their own way to try and win a Super Bowl. Rashee Rice, Harrison Butker. Now you've got Isaiah Buggs, who's out there, and there's this allegation that's out there, and again, it's just an allegation of animal abuse, animal cruelty. There were some dogs allegedly locked up in a back screened area. I think it was 3 dogs. One of them wound up having to be euthanized. Anybody who knows anything about me knows I'm a dog person. You start messing with dogs, we got problems. Where is it's an interesting question, because we had Matt Verderam on the show, I don't know, a week or 2 ago. And we were talking about the Harrison Butker thing with him that we brought up. Where's the line? Is there a line? Is there anything for this organization that goes too far that they'll cut a guy? Because I still haven't seen nobody gets cut on the Kansas City Chiefs, no matter what they do, apparently.
No, you're exactly right, Jason. By the way, I would just like to say that we are definitely a dog guy show, both of us, having pictures of our dogs right above our heads. This is horrible, terrible. One of the worst things that a human being can do is hurt an innocent animal like this. This inexcusable, right? But for the Kansas City Chiefs, all they continue to do is show us that they don't care. It's funny that the Kansas City Chiefs have become the shut up and dribble organization. Because that's what they are. That's all they are. All they care about is what you do on the field. Whatever you do off the field is not their problem. And you saw it all the way back from the Jackson Mahomes incident when he was dancing on the Sean Taylor roped off number on his commemorative day in Washington, all the way to today when their players are abusing animals. Allegedly. And saying misogynistic things into a microphone in front of thousands of people. I mean, this organization is off the field in absolute shambles.
It used to be, it's interesting. They felt like for a while a team I could root for, even though I wasn't a fan of the Chiefs.
Never.
They have become very difficult to root for. I saw a headline cross on my screen last night when I was prepping for the show. What are you looking around for? You okay?
Am I going insane? The Chiefs fan base has always been one of the most annoying in the NFL.
Look, the Cowboys drown out everybody if we talk about annoying fan bases. So to me, I was prepping last night and I'm watching. I'm going through and there's a headline that crossed on my screen that said Patrick Mahomes' stance on the presidential election. And I didn't even click on it because my honest opinion now is I don't care about anything Patrick Mahomes has to say. The only story I want to report on when it comes to Patrick Mahomes is what he's doing on the field. And that's not to say I hate him or dislike him or anything like that. But after the Harrison Butker thing, where he took the high road when he had an opportunity to speak out. And I'm not saying he had to put Harrison Butker into the verbal firing squad, but he could have said so much more in that situation than he did. I lost so much respect for him as a person as opposed to the player, who I have a ton of respect for, and there is a distinction to be made between the two. There's a lot of amazing athletes that we watch that I wouldn't want to necessarily dine out with. Mahomes has kind of become one of those guys. I don't care what he thinks about the presidential election. I don't care what he thinks about anything other than how to win a game in the playoffs or how he goes about manipulating the play calling with Andy Reid. No, I don't care about any of it. I just don't. I'm done.
It's very interesting that this narrative has been constructed around Patrick Mahomes, despite how much he's tried to combat it, right? Like with him appearing in the quarterback Netflix special that really only exposed how awkward his marriage really is. And I mean, the guy, quite frankly, off the field, like outside of him wearing a helmet and being between the lines, the dude is a complete meme. He doesn't get along with his wife. He's got a hilarious voice. His brother is an absolute nutcase. If this guy weren't the greatest quarterback in the last 20 years to grace the NFL, He'd be a wacko. There's no way he'd be employed anywhere. If he were not a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes would have too many off the field issues to have a job.
It's all a big reality show, quite honestly. If you look at what's happened with his dad, the former pitcher, DUI, I mean, there's no getting around it right now. The Chiefs are it's just a weird situation. I don't want to call them a mess. They've just won back-to-back Super Bowls. And frankly, would you bet against them to win a third right now?
Not at all.
No.
In the meeting rooms and in terms of like what they got going on in that large area of green grass, they're amazing.
Yes.
Outside of all that, horrible mess, shambles.
Yeah.
Couldn't be worse.
It's strange. It's a bizarre tale of two teams off the field and on the field. All right, stick around. We're coming back. Odds and ends right around the corner on this Thursday edition of Sports Wrap. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Thursday. Before we go, a reminder to go and subscribe to the podcast Vodcast. See, I said Vodcast again. I'm going to be castigated for not understanding the lingo these days. Go and subscribe to the podcast. It's available on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, anywhere you get your podcasts. Go and subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. All right, without any further ado, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. The end of any potential jail time, just crazy to think of, for Scotty Scheffler, as the Louisville Police Department says, hey, let's let bygones be bygones. That whole thing of us, arresting you and screwing up your chances to win another major, let's just forget about that whole thing. Man, Scotty Scheffler is a much better person than I am. Because if it were me, I'd be suing that police department for everything it's worth for the way they handled that situation. Then they're leaking out video of him talking to an officer. Just awful. Awful.
Well, that video was evidence in the courtroom that was presented, and that's where people got it, because the court was being the court session was being streamed, and people were watching the stream. But this is a bad look for a police department that has faced a lot of backlash over the last half decade, we'll say. In January, the AP published a report that the Justice Department has found that Louisville Police Department have engaged in a pattern of violating constitutional rights, right? Like, this is, as much as it pains me to say it, in this specific area with this specific police department, this is, like you said, par for the course, no pun intended with the Scotty Scheffler
pun is
thing.
intended. Pun is definitely intended.
It's tough when you watch all the videos and you hear what the lawyers have to say about what the police were trying to do to Scotty Scheffler, and you see the video of what actually happened from a street cam. You put 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 together, and the officer not having his body cam on. It's yet another bad look for this police department.
Yep.
And, not to make this a sports analogy, but like, if I'm the front office of the Louisville Police Department right now, I'm doing something. There's got to be some sort of change made, because they got to figure it out. They can't keep doing this kind of thing and making national news, right? This is twice in 5 years that they've had a week of national attention because of something that their cops did. I don't know what the solution is, but they got to do something.
An extension for Jalen Waddle, $84.75 million. We talked about contracts for wide receivers. 3 years, $84.75 million, $76 million guaranteed for Jalen Waddle.
And It's exactly the point we made yesterday on the show, Jason, and it's going back to Justin Jefferson resetting the market next year, and the year after that, Jamar Chase resetting it once again. All of these high mid-level wide receiver twos, all these high-end wide receiver twos on mid-level teams are securing their bag because they know that now is the time before Justin Jefferson comes in and shatters the ceiling on all of them. So great for Jalen Waddle. He gets to be the fifth highest paid receiver in the NFL for a whole season. And then he'll probably drop down to 6th, 7th, or 8th.
I wonder what T. Higgins is thinking right now, too.
Yeah. This changes the entire landscape around the Cincinnati Bengals. Has Tyler Boyd landed somewhere yet? It changes the landscape around what the Bengals are going to get in return for T. Higgins, because they're gonna have to trade him. It just feels like there's no other option. They're not going to be able to pay T. Higgins this offseason and then pay Jamar Chase the following offseason and still maintain the Joe Burrow contract. They've kind of handcuffed themselves to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase at this point, and they'll have to try and figure it all out elsewhere. In terms of the Dolphins on the whole, does this really scare me, this team still? No. And I'll say that as long as Tua is their quarterback and they continue to put stock into him, that team will not scare me. And quite frankly, this contract being as large as it is, it's just going to keep them from paying Tyreek Hill when time comes due, because in a couple of years, that contract's going to be up.
Before we go, yours truly, I mentioned it earlier in the show, hit Dave & Buster's last night. That is footage of me and my big bald head shooting hoops. Did you have any critique of my shooting there, Sam?
I think we got to work a little bit. I think we got to work a little bit on the form and the wrist action. But other than that, I mean, hey, 71, I believe, right? That's like a pretty good score.
Something like that. Not terrible. I'm right. Yeah, it was 71. There it is on the screen. 71. Not terrible, but had a ton of fun again. Thanks to the folks at Dave & Buster's. They were very nice to me because I had no idea. I walked into the place and I'm like, okay, what do I do? Do I just go play games? Do I have to be eating something? Like, I really had no idea how Dave & Buster's worked. I had never stepped foot in one. It's a good time. It's a lot of fun.
It's always a good time.
Always a good time. Always a good time with you, Sam Yarnell. We'll catch you back here tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. I am Jason Page. We will see you back here on Friday for another edition of Sports Wrap. Tino Patino will be here to talk NASCAR. We'll see you then.